Okay, maybe we should begin. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Randall Martin from the British Columbia Council for International Education, BCCIE. I'd like to welcome you here this morning. I would like to sincerely thank my hardworking, long-suffering colleagues, Nellie, Morgan, and Maria, for working on this today. They put a lot of effort into putting yesterday and today together for recent months, and obviously, you know that we've been victims of the weather. We're comparing this to a mini API. If you recall, we put in a few years of work to bring API to Vancouver, and the pandemic got us. This time, Mother Nature got us. Um, and as we moved entirely virtual yesterday, we were still of the assumption that VCC would be closed today and that many of you would be unable to travel. And VCC, it turns out, is open, but I think it's probably safer just to do this online today. So thank you for joining us. Again, thanks to my colleagues, thanks to our speakers, who we will introduce individually during the course of events. Today's session is on advancing international student supports. If you've been paying any attention to the newspapers or to the news of our sector, you'll realize this is a huge issue in terms of the entire journey of an international student being identified, applying to Canada, getting into our classrooms, getting into housing, appropriate programming while they're there, and then transitioning on possibly into the workforce, possibly into PR status afterwards. It's a long journey that our international students take, and it's important, I believe, that institutions try to address all aspects of that program, not only the contact hours in the classroom. And we have speakers from some community groups today. I think in many ways, the journey of our international students reflects, in some ways, the journey of new immigrants to Canada, of refugees, of temporary foreign workers. There are a lot of similarities and things between these various communities of new Canadians or visiting Canadians. And so I hope we can begin a discussion today. We've been reading that the federal government is looking at imposing some kind of a cap on numbers of international students in a way that's reflective of the fact, I think, that we're victims of our own success. The institutions, the provinces, the federal government have been investing in this entity, into this enterprise for well over a decade. And unfortunately, I think we got caught up in the trap of counting success as numbers, completely quantitatively. And you know, we've got 1 million international students in Canada. We must be doing a great job, and just not necessarily paying attention to the broader systemic issues of institutional integrity of our marketing and programming, of supporting students in their entire cycle through the system as well. And so the fact that the federal government is talking about caps is reflective of, you know, frankly, their housing policy. I think we've been ignoring housing at all levels for a long time. It's been a systemic issue, but it's very easy to point to a population, in this case, international students, and suggest that maybe they're part of the problem, when in fact they're, as we've invited them here, and they're as big victims of this housing crisis as anyone else. So we want to look at how we're engaging with students at the institutional level, basically doing everything we can to support that journey, to support the messaging we give them in terms of the cost of living, in terms of their expectations, in terms of, you know, it appears now there's hundreds of thousands of students in the country who came here anticipating they would have a chance permanent resident status, and there's no capacity for that population. That a lot of students, I don't want to say have been lied to, but a lot of students, I think, will be going home disappointed ultimately by their experience or the lack of meeting of expectations of coming to Canada. So these are issues I think that the federal government in its way is trying to address. We can also anticipate in the coming months a provincial framework, BC provincial framework on international education, which is also going to try to address some of these issues in terms of student responsibility, institutional responsibility, in terms of just ensuring student success and ensuring what we can do to work towards a positive student experience. Certainly, we at BCCIE will also be focusing on that a lot. This is not a one-off event. We'll be doing work on our website in terms of resources. We'll be doing research consultations and a number of things in support of this in the coming months and in the coming years. So again, I would like to thank our speakers, my colleagues. Briefly, I'd like to go over the agenda after I finish going on and on here this morning. We're going to introduce our first speaker is Swinder Singh, is an immigration settlement worker at Archway Community Services. She will speak, followed by Ryan Drew, the Director of Integrated Services for Newcomers at S.U.C.C.E.S.S. We will stop then for 10 or 15 minutes to see if there's any questions or any further discussion that you in the audience would like to pursue. We'll then have two other presentations, one from Clay Little, the Associate Director of Indigenous Education and Community Engagement at Vancouver Community College, and then our friend Daryl Smith, Director of International at the University of the Fraser Valley. And that will then, and again, a Q&A period to follow that. And then we're going to do a break off for the rest of the morning section and to do a consultation. We've got a number of questions. We will ask you alphabetically by your last name to choose a room to go into. We have 4 consultation rooms. We have a series of questions we would like to pose to you, moderated discussion. These will not be recorded, but in fact, I mean, we will be taking notes to use these answers and to use these discussions to inform our activities moving forward. These will not be reported to government or shared online or anything like that, but we would like to find out what the issues are, what people are thinking at the institutional level, and what people are doing at the institutional level to help inform what sort of capacity building or resources that we can work towards for the sector. And that will take us to noon. We had originally looked forward to having a brown bag lunch at VCC and sharing that with you, but we will give you a lunch break, and then there will be some breakout sessions in the afternoon as well. So that's how the morning or how the day will look. Thank you all for attending, despite the fact that we're virtual. Maybe that's a blessing. I had to drive my son to school this morning, and the roads are not fantastic. So hopefully you're all warm and you can make coffee at home and enjoy yourselves. So again, thank you for joining us today. And with that, I would like to give the platform, the stage, the screen to Swinder Singh from Archway Community Services. Swinder, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. If I can have my presentation up to. Thank you, Neil. Good morning, everyone, and I hope that everybody is keeping themselves safe in this extreme weather. And thank you so much for joining. I think this is a very important topic that we are discussing today. And my name is Swinder Singh, and I work with Archway Community Services, and I am one of the Punjabi settlement worker in Abbotsford office. Next slide, please. Today we are going to be talking about international students. So when we talk about international students, we see them in 3 different groups. First is the international students who come as single entity. They are as young as 18-year-olds straight from high school from their country to Canada. And that could be a biggest challenge because they are really young and don't have any support here. And right from there, they could fall into the things they might not be, because they might not be street smart, and in the country they are so close to their families are watching them, and now they have all the freedom. So that could be a biggest challenge for them when they are so young and coming to a different country. The second category that we see is students with the spouse dependent. And so you can see that it's not just for the international student to have money for themselves to support, but also for their spouse who's coming with them to Canada. And if the spouse gets job, then of course that will help. But if not, as the jobs are not available right now because of the recession, so that could be also another challenge that they could face. The third category is students coming with the children as their dependent. So this category has a huge responsibility, not just to survive for themselves, but also they have to have their kids get to the school. So that will be additional responsibility. They have to have enough money to survive and also do study for themselves. So that adds a huge responsibility to the international students who come to this country with their children. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk some of the services that Archway Settlement Program has for international students. We are funded by provincial government, and under that funding, we can serve the student with the labor market emphasis. So mostly it's like related to work, but we can also serve them in a settlement if those services are not provided in the institution they are going to. And our settlement team speaks collectively of different 20 languages. So we can serve the students in many languages if they need to speak in ethnic language. Some of the services we provide in settlement is helping them to build a resume and covering letter and provide information. Sometimes they don't know how to create the resume based on Canadian workforce. So we help them with that. We provide them with the covering letter information. They don't know what is covering letter. So we explain what to put in covering letter. And sometimes they take the same resume to apply for all different jobs. So that's why they don't get a job. So we tell them it's really important for you to have your resume cater to the job you are applying. So just basic information so that can help them to get the job and start their life in there. We also help them to job search information, provide them with different websites, and also how they can tap into some hidden job market, talking to everybody they see, so that something you never know who you meet can have a job for you. We also help them when they come to Canada to apply for their social insurance number app, and also to apply for MSP application, which is medical care card for them. And if they qualify for maternity and sickness applications, we also help them, which is if they have 600 hours in Canada in last 52 weeks. So sometimes international students, they get pregnant and they need to apply for maternity. We also help them to apply for those applications. Some of these students who come with the children, they also need help with school registrations. So we help them to talk to the school district, help them to apply for online application, connect them to schools, and also later on, if they need help to apply for child tax benefits, which is when they are here for 18 months, they can apply for child tax benefit too. So we help them with that too. Later on, they might need help with health units. If they have kids, they need to update their immunizations. So some of the those are the services that we provide them under the settlement program. Next slide, please. Some of the other programs that we have at Archway for international students is legal advocacy program for students who are working in agriculture jobs. As you know, Abbotsford has a huge farm area, and then there are a lot of jobs in farm sectors and nurseries and canneries. So if the international students are working in that sector, and if they're having an issue with their employers, they are not getting paid, or other abuse issue, then they can contact legal advocacy program at Archway, and they can help them to connect with employer and get sort out the issue they are having, or if there is any further information they need, they also can provide that. We also have selfie program for international students if they want to upgrade their English level. And sometimes the students struggle with the food to meet their end meets. So Archway has a food bank where these students can get help with the food. And we also have Seva Kitchen, which is students can get their ethnic food if they want from that program. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of the issues that international students face when they come to Canada. And the first one is housing. As soon as they land, the first question is where they're gonna go. So they look at the housing issue. For example, like if we see at the housing, lack of housing in comparison to increased population. Recently, we have seen that there is huge migration to Canada, whether it's international students or work permit or refugees or PRs. And as the government is trying to match the population that they need in Canada. So in comparison to the housing that we have here is very less. I know the housing is booming too, but in comparison to the population and what we have available for them is very, very low, which leads students can find affordable accommodations. So what they have to do is they share their rooms and basement with the strangers, and that way they compromise their personal safety because not much is available. So whoever has a space available for them, either they are sharing or renting a separate room, and then they don't know whether that could have a criminal record or they might have alcohol issue. So they put themselves in a personal safety situations, and that's a big issue. Later on, when they're sharing the room with their roommate, with their classmates, what happens is they share the room. Later on, they find that this person probably have an anger issue, or they are alcoholic and drinking and partying a lot. So it interferes their studies, and also it interferes with their personal safety too. Lack of housing options forces students to live in a poor living condition. So some of the students who are living in basements or rooms, they are not up to date. Maybe the appliances are not working properly, or maybe the basements are not clean enough. So there are a lot of these kind of options too, but students, because they can't afford the new houses because the rents are too high, so they end up living in the conditions which might not be good for them to live, but they have to compromise it. Landlord abuse, and they see compromised privacy. And also sometimes some female have mentioned that they've been sexually harassed. For example, when they are sharing the room or renting the basement, they are gonna be using the shared laundry. So at that time, they feel that the landlord can just come to their basement whenever they want. And some of them are also not allowed to lock the basements. So there is a lot of issues that's happening in terms of landlord abuse. And when they are, because these, students cannot afford the uh, high rent accommodations, so they sometimes put up with this situation because they don't have any other place to go to. There is no much options they can look for. And for these situations, we do refer them to BC Residence Tenancy Branch, and we also tell them to have the written contract. Some of these students, they decided not to have the written contract so that they can move whenever they need to. Sometimes they change the university, sometimes they change some other place is available, they can move to a cheaper place, or maybe sharing with a friend, so they choose not to have the written contract, but we encourage them to have it because it's for their own safety. And in terms of sexual harassment for females, we also refer them to transition houses, so that if they feel unsafe, those services are available for them. And also encourage them to report to the police. And we tell them definitely there is organizations, those are available there to support them if they want to report it or if they need any help in that. Next slide, please. The another issue that we face is lack of jobs. So lack of jobs and jobs and study balance is also a really big issue for the students. Lack of jobs because of recession. So as you know, right now recession is going, people don't have jobs. So lack of jobs are letting people to live in the situations where it might not be favorable for them. Bigger stores and bigger businesses are shutting down. As you know, in COVID, all the big stores have closed, and even the recession is hitting the same thing. So those people have been laid off, they don't have jobs, and the small businesses are barely surviving. So they are not hiring new people, they are trying to meet ends, just the owner is doing everything by themselves. So that leads a lot of population with no jobs, and international students come here and they look for jobs and it's not there for them. Working long hours to meet financial needs lead them to academic negligence too, because there is not much, they need financial help. So that's why they work long hours with minimum wages. And that way they end up neglecting their study, and which might, lead them to either drop out or have to pay another session with extra fee. So that's also affecting the international student who are coming here. Most of them are working with minimum wage, and some of them also have pressure from their parents because they took debt or they sold their properties to send them here. So now they have to pay those debt back. So they also expecting these students to some money back. So that adds another pressure for these students when they are coming here with no jobs, have to pay this fee for their own studies, and on top of that helping their parents, add the stress to them. They can barely pay their own rents, and how can they send money back to their families who are waiting for them to pay the debt. And as you know, we all are feeling these days the groceries are getting very, very expensive. It's not just for international, even we are feeling that. So that way they are struggle to buy groceries. And one of the international student who just finished practicum with me, and she mentioned that sometimes they just eat chips and drink milk, and just, sometimes eating is not even their priority because there are other things they need to take care of to survive here. And some of the students also can get exploited at workplace, where students are working there, but they are not getting paid by their employer, or their payment is not given on time, and the employer might be rude with them and not treating them well. A lot of emotional abuse, but these students don't report that because they don't have other job, and they have to have the money to survive the situation they are in right now. So in terms of financial support, we really don't see any existing, because when they come to Canada, they are expected to survive with the money they have, and so there is no resources that we can refer to. But we have food bank that they can access the food. We also have, as I mentioned before, Seva Kitchen, where they can get ethnic food. We also refer them to local Sikh temples. As you know, Sikh temples have a kitchen where anybody are welcome and they can have food. Yeah, either breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Food is always available, and nobody stops anybody to go there and eat. So that's some of the resources that we use to refer these students in case they are struggling with these kind of situations. And in terms of if there is employer abuse where they are not paying, again, we have legal advocacy program that can help them to in this situation, talking to employer and making sure their payments are getting paid so that the students are not suffering. And probably universities provide employment rights resources too. So I would love to hear from different organizations, what they are doing in terms of when they see students are struggling in this situation. And it's also will be really helpful if the organizations can have a list of jobs available in the local community for these students. That will be a really big help for the students, and also for the housing too. When the students come, if you have the list of housing that's available in the local community, that can alleviate a lot of pressure from the students' mind. So that'll be really beneficial. Next slide, please. Yeah. So mental health and other health issues. Students have many stresses, as I talked before, that they have financial issues they are dealing with at this moment. They have long school hours. They have to finish their assignments. They have to pass their exams. They work long hours with minimum wage to make their end meets. They might have employer or landlord abuse because of this situation they are in. And they are isolated because they live away from their family. And when they're going through these situations, they don't have anybody to talk to because they haven't built that probably trust with in the new community with the new people. So they really feel isolated and they don't know where to go. So I think it will be also nice to have some sort of support in the organizations, that if there is students who are struggling with these kind of things, they can go to and get support. So combination of all these things can lead students to go and have anxiety and depression and many other health issues. And dealing with issues alone can make things, the combination can make things even worse. And I remember one of the student who was admitted in hospital, Abbotsford Hospital, and the social worker contacted us and they needed to see like what support we can provide. So I went there. This student was diagnosed with cancer and she was at the last stage. So doctor told that she has only 4 months. So like now she's here, her family is in India, like what we can do. So we, with the social worker, we wrote a letter to immigration so that her family can come here and be with her in these last moments that she has. So we were able to bring her mom and dad and a brother here so that they can spend time with her in her last moments, and able to secure a house, a room for them close to the hospital where they can walk to the hospital to spend time with her. And we also talked to this organization and see, because when she got sick, it was a week before her next semester supposed to start. If that money can be refunded, that was paid. So and later on, like it took a little bit while, but they end up returning that money. So also like looking into these kind of situation, that if you faces this kind of situation, what kind of policies you have, whether you are able to return it, or how you can see the situation of the students and able to help them out. I think that will be another thing that we will be really good to look into and have a policy around. And you might have a policy. I would love to hear so that we know like how your institutions also working in it. And there is not much mental health support that we have for international students. I talked to local mental health office, and they say they just have group information sessions for them where they teach them how to manage the anxiety or deal with the depression, but there is no one-on-one support is available for them. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about some of the collaboration and partnership we have with the UFE and other local organizations here in Abbotsford. UFE is the largest educational partner. We collaborate in Fraser Valley. UFE invite us whenever they have orientations or welcome fairs in Abbotsford. So we go there and we set up our booth, we give information to the students, and we also get chance to meet these students and get to know one-on-one. So in future, when they need help, they know who we are and they feel comfortable coming and accessing these services from us. And we answer any question they have. It could be any regarding social insurance number, medical, how the system works here. So we are able to provide that information right there. And also universities, social work department, they also invite us to do presentations in their class. And that way the students get to know the settlement services that are available, not only for students, but also for their families. And also like in future, if they see somebody who needs help, they can refer it to our program. So it's really work both way too. And also newcomers get to know the students get to know the challenges that the newcomers faces settling in Canada. So they could get even more compassionate towards the international students who are in their class, because no, these are the challenges they face. So that's another positive point to have that collaboration. And that's also give them opportunity to know like what services we provide, and they might be interested in doing their practicum with us and do volunteer opportunity, volunteer with us. And sometimes we looked at that when they do practicum, we are also end up hiring if that's a good fit, for a program. So it's really works really well in a collaboration, and it's a win-win for the university and even for us too. So I feel that that's having educational institution and local community services collaboration is really beneficial for both the organizations. There is a civil radio, which is a community and campus radio station at UFE. And we use that radio station a lot in terms of I have been doing a radio program there too. I interviews, the people from Archway and see what services are available for community at Archway, and so that people are aware of different programs and they can access, and all services are free. They don't have to pay a fee. Sometimes lack of awareness of the services also impact that people get into the abuse and taken advantage of. So I think creating awareness is a good way to go. And the radio station, I feel, not just civil radio, but any radio station is a really good way to educating the people you want. Even the international students, I know they all listen to these radios, and if you want to educate, you can use that platform, and especially that platform if that's available within the organization that you are working in. So, and we also work with the Vancouver Career College and Western Community College, where they invite us to do a presentation about our services so that the students are aware of what free services are available for them. And whenever they need, they can not only access for themselves, but also the other people they know or for their family members. Next slide, please. The last one is some of the best practices we think that can be adapted. The pre-arrival orientation is very, very crucial, so the student know what to expect, you know, when they're coming here, and that they have to be working, and they will be studying. They have to do everything by themselves, so there will be a lot of management. And if they are ready for it, you know, very practically showing that picture, that there will be a lot that will be happening when they are coming to Canada, so that they are mentally prepared for that. Free resources within the educational institutions they are in. So let's say they came to UFE, so all these services, those are available at UFE. If that list can be given, and even later on, if any workshops can be done to create more awareness about it, will be very beneficial. Local community resources list given to the students immediately, but not journal. Sometimes the list is given journal information, but I think it will be better if those lists will be catered locally where they are living in. That will be more beneficial. In orientations, when you have orientation, behavioral expectation, the reason I'm saying is sometimes we have seen some of the students get in trouble with law, and some of them also got deported. So to prevent that, if they know that what are the consequences of these behaviors in case that happen, to have that expectations very clearly, I think that will be also beneficial. And collaboration with the local community organization, I think to give a holistic approach to serve international students, it says that it takes a whole community to raise a child. I think because these kids are leaving their country, they leave their families, they are here, and let's be the community to help these kids to settle and have a better life, so that they take a good have a good experience in Canada, and they are willing to live here and have a good life and be our future. So let's work together. And I think that will be the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, I will happy to give that.
Thank you so much, Swinder, for sharing your perspective and your presentation. It was very informative. Then I'd like to hand it over to Ryan Drew from S.U.C.C.E.S.S, and then afterwards we will do a little Q&A for both of these representatives from community organizations. Ryan, over to you.
Be good if I unmute myself. Thank you so much for the introduction, Randall, and thank you, Swinder, for that excellent detailed presentation on the challenges that these students are facing. Okay, I am going to share my screen, and I'm going to start the slideshow, which is going to make things challenging for me to see. Are you seeing which screen, the presenter view or the?
It looks great, Ryan.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much for attending today. My name is Ryan Drew. I'm the Director of Integrated Services for Newcomers at S.U.C.C.E.S.S. And I would like to start off by just giving you a bit of an overview of the agency so that you have a sense of how we fit into this sector. So our vision at S.U.C.C.E.S.S is that we really want a vibrant Canadian society where people thrive and contribute to inclusive communities. And of course, our mission to enact that is really to empower people on their Canadian journey, however that looks like for them. And that's really focusing on helping them to achieve their goals through our services and through our advocacy. And that really promotes, belonging, wellness, and independence. And I think you can see that the services that we would provide to international students would really support this mission. Now, a little bit about ourselves. We are so excited. Just last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. So we've been around for quite a while now. And we are the largest newcomer social service agency in BC, if not in Canada, actually. And last fiscal, we served over 77,000 unique clients in 50 languages, which equated to about over 152,000 client services, because we have many clients accessing multiple services from our over 40 service locations. Right across Metro Vancouver, we have an office in Fort St. John, as well as offices in China and Seoul, South Korea. Now, we have a very diverse and multicultural organization with over 1,000 staff, and our annual budget is over $76 million last fiscal. And we have 3 main lines of service. So we have our integrated services for newcomers, which is my portfolio. We have affordable housing services, and we're pushing about 1,000 units of affordable housing that we oversee, and many more coming on board this year, actually. And of course, we also provide culturally appropriate seniors care, and that includes not only long-term care, but assisted living and adult day centers. Now, our approach to clients and services is that we really center clients in the work that we do. And then we really take a look at, that sort of holistic wraparound service to really support clients in every aspect of their life. So we do a lot of work around orienting them to Canada, supporting their adaptation and integration into their communities. Of course, one of the main ways to do that is to ensure that they are connected to the labor market. So we focus on their career and skills development. And then, of course, their wellness, their health, and their housing needs are key components as well. And then ultimately, we want them to connect to their communities. So helping them to engage in that community connection is super important. And then surrounding all of that, we really focus on our organizational development and our performance quality improvement as well. So we're constantly taking a look at how we can improve our services and make them the best that they can be for our clients. So how does this all fit in with the international students? So as Swinder had already mentioned, the settlement services for this client group are funded provincially under the BC Settlement and Integration Services Program. They actually just announced yesterday the successful service providers that will be providing service as of April 1st of this year. And so I'm very pleased to say that Success will be continuing in providing those services. And I believe Archway was on that list as well. So congratulations, Swinder. And actually the program name is going to change. It's now going to be called, this is as of April 1st, the BC Newcomer Services Program. So, but we're in January still, so I will keep the current name as is. So the services are funded by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. And for Success, we offer those services right across Metro Vancouver and in Fort St. John. And one of the challenges with this program is that the funding is quite limited compared to the client groups that we are expected to serve within that funding envelope. While there was a significant lift that will be implemented as of April 1st, it still does not come close to meeting the client service demand that's out there. So under this program, of course, international students are covered, temporary foreign workers, naturalized citizens, as well as refugee claimants. So it is quite a broad and diverse group. And I think Swinder did a really great job of going into more detail of the types of settlement issues that folks can be supported with. But those supports can be done one-on-one or in group workshops or webinars. And the focus really is around information and orientation on different settlement topics, whether that's around housing or healthcare, of course, employment services. And I know Swinder did a great job of, talking a bit more about, customizing cover letters and resumes. And then, of course, that is always for most of these clients, they're looking for different pathways to permanent residency. And so we can help them have a better understanding of what's available. And then, of course, under this program, we're able to partner with different post-secondary institutions to help arrange job fairs for graduating students or other supports. So just to give you a sense of the client volumes that we have served over the last few years, of course, this is a little bit impacted by the pandemic. And of course, the funding availability for the staffing that we could have to serve these groups. But as you can see, the numbers are continuing to grow, and I don't expect that to change. We're well on track to surpass our numbers from last year. And we're really excited about that piece to be able to continue to support this population. To give you a sense of the top 5 source countries where these international students are coming from that are accessing our service. So I will put that caveat in. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. These tend to be the top source countries for immigration as well. And so it's, I think, pretty standard, but I wanted to share with you in case you were wondering. Okay, so what are some of the challenges? And again, I think Swinder did a really good job of going deep into some of the settlement issues that at this client group are experiencing. But I think, we are continuing to see a lot of policies from IRCC changing. And so the challenge here is to ensure that the most current and up-to-date information is being shared with this client group, making sure that, folks at institutions, in the settlement serving organizations, as well as the students themselves are really up to date on the current policies that are in place so that they don't end up in any sort of troubling situations. Now, of course, like I mentioned, a lot of folks are looking for pathways to PR. And again, this is connected to a lot of the changing IRCC policies, different pathways that are opening up. And so there is, increased risk for these clients to, fall into immigration fraud and have folks, basically rely on information or quote unquote professionals that are helping them with their immigration pathway when in fact they are being scammed. So it's really a challenging piece that we really want to raise the awareness of these clients so that they can be on the lookout for these types of scams that are out there. And then, of course, there are eligibility limitations for services. So, Swinder did mention that international students can access our settlement services if those services, excuse me, if those certain services are not already being provided or supported at the institution that they're studying at. So it can be a little bit confusing in terms of who can actually access service. And then you also have the added layer that they can only access services that are provincially funded. The federally funded services, settlement services that are funded by IRCC, international students are not eligible for. So it really limits what services they can access, and there can be that added complication of what are their institutions already helping support them with. And of course, they are here under a very precarious status. And I think Swinder really went into a lot of detail around the vulnerabilities that they're experiencing, whether that's financial, housing, their employment. All of these things are, influencing their decisions, because ultimately they are here for a reason. They are here, with a lot of pressures from their families back home, and always the risk of being deported or not being able to stay in Canada. So that can really influence, some of the steps that they take. And with all of that do come a lot of mental health concerns. And, it's challenging because unfortunately, our entire system does not support mental well-being for the whole population, not just international students. There are very limited resources out there, and the ones that are available are quite expensive. However, one of the things that our agency is really proud of, we do have low and no cost one-on-one counseling sessions in first language, as well as we have our success helplines, which are great, so that folks who need that listening ear, that bit of support, can call the helplines in first language to get that emotional support that they're looking for. Now, I know, Swinder was talking a lot about, unemployment for these folks, and that a lot of them were in sort of minimum wage jobs when they do find employment. But I think the challenge here is that, these are very, talented, intelligent folks who, are obviously, um, you know, furthering themselves through higher education. And so, how can we facilitate and ensure that they're being able to access meaningful employment opportunities? Is there a way to help them connect to positions that are sort of maybe not exactly in their line of study, but at least somehow connected to it, so that they can have a more fulfilling experience while they're studying? And then, of course, there is an information gap. So I think there are a lot of institutions that are unaware of the settlement services and other supports that are available for this client group. And so how can we, close that loop a little bit better, so that the students themselves are being well supported? And then, as Swinder went into lots of detail, they are financially at risk. Cost of living has greatly increased, and that includes, their housing, food, transportation, you name it. But on top of that, when this program, first began, so long ago, a lot of the students that came, were from wealthier families. It was, you know, it was nothing for them to come here and study. But now a lot of folks are, taking out debts, they're selling properties. They're basically, the families are investing everything into this one person to send them overseas. And as Swinder was saying, the students are being asked to send money back now. So it's in a totally flip situation. And so it's very challenging for them. And again, it's influencing the decisions that they're making in terms of, where they are finding housing, compromising their nutrition, these sorts of things. Okay, so that's also depressing, but what can we look at? Promising practices. Okay, so I think, the things that we've been observing is that the post-secondary institutions themselves are really taking an active approach, in sharing the service gaps or knowledge gaps that they're seeing with their students, and sharing that with us, the service providers. And what does that do? That really helps us to ensure that we can do better to connect with these folks and to make sure that they're getting the information that they need. And so that's really leading to more collaborations between post-secondary institutions and the service providers, which I think is key. You know, we have the staff, we have the specialized knowledge, you know, we have the expertise in terms of supporting these client groups with their settlement and employment goals and needs. And so it only makes sense that we leverage the existing infrastructure that is in place. And again, because of those collaborations and because the institutions are having those conversations with the service providers, we're then able to provide tailored services to better meet client needs. So that, you know, if we see that gap, okay, let's create programming, let's, you know, offer, you know, webinars, group sessions, you know, information brochures, you know, whatever it is that's needed to help support, you know, this, you know, very specific thing that is being observed. And then one really promising practice that we think is really, you know, like we really want to ensure folks are not having any barriers to accessing service. And one of the best ways to do that is to offer one-on-one appointments and services right on campus. You know, they're already there, and it's a lot easier to make that warm referral to the service provider to say like, hey, they're right next door. You know, they're like right in this room. You can go see them and, you know, get that question answered right away. Okay, so what are the priorities that we see going forward? So definitely, you know, while we are seeing collaborations and conversations happening between institutions and service providers, we feel that that can be increased and strengthened, you know, to basically pull those two stakeholders together even closer. We feel at the federal level that they can strengthen PR pathways for folks, make them more clear. You know, while it's not the goal of every international student that's in Canada, a lot of them want to get educated and go back and support their communities. Vast majority of them, though, are looking for pathways to permanent residency. So how can we encourage the federal government to strengthen the pathways we have and maybe create even better pathways? And we also believe that there's an opportunity to leverage the existing infrastructure through opening the eligibility requirements so that international students can actually access IRCC funded settlement services. The funding is much more significant than the provincial side, and it's already in place. So the only thing that would change is, again, the volume of clients that would come through, but it's there, and at least it's another safety net that folks could rely on. And then, of course, awareness is really the key, both in terms of the institutions as well as the clients themselves, that they do have supports and services available to them through service providers. And we really see that as a key piece, that these folks are really, you know, they're feeling really alone when they don't have to feel quite so alone, because we are here to help. So I want to say thank you. I kind of rushed through that a bit because I think it's the end of the session is now. But if you do have any other questions, or you want to reach out, even set up a meeting to talk about how Success could support your institution and the clients that are there, please feel free to reach out via email. And you can always stay in touch with us. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to see you there as well. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Ryan. I think we have a few minutes for any questions from the audience. So if anyone has a question for either Swinder or Ryan, feel free to put it either in the chat or to the little hands up, and then they can answer your question.
And I'm just looking at the chat box, and yes, those are the top 5 countries. You guys got it right. Thank you, Rajat.
Micah has a
And
question.
thank you, Randall.
Micah, please go ahead and unmute yourself to ask your question. Micah, if you want, you can ask your question. No questions coming in. A lot of thank yous, and that was lovely and very informative sessions. If there are no questions immediately, then we might just move on to our next speaker. But if you would have any more questions coming up when you think about everything that's being said, feel free to reach out to Ryan and Swinder afterwards. And then I'm going to pass it over to Clay Little from Vancouver Community. Oh, there is one. I see one more hand. Maybe we'll quickly take one question. Paras, I see that.
Yes.
Yes.
I do have a question on the BC student aid, basically. I'm not sure if it will coming under the financial support of the students as well or not. But the thing is that what I was able to find on their website was like they have some sort of grants available for the students, but what I have seen from my experiences, they never give the grants to the students like those who are not having either their PR or a citizen here in Canada, which means they don't have a grant for the international students basically, but they do have mentioned with the protected status. And I don't know like what does the protected status mean at that time, even if they are saying like the grants are available especially for the protected statuses. My question is just like on that, like how we can arrange at that moment the financial services from the BC governments or something, or from the external organizations who works with the government directly.
Ryan Swinder, I don't know if it's inside your expertise, but feel free to answer if you have
Okay.
anything to add.
I know this is being recorded, but don't hold me to this.
Community college.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me well. My name is Clay, and I'm really excited to be here for the BC Council for International Education Symposium, Advancing International Student Support. My topic today is Indigenous allyship, engage, connect, and learn. So I'm hoping that I give you guys some things to think about just in terms of how to engage and interact and maybe even do some things on your own with regards to Indigenous peoples of Canada. Next slide, please. Again, my name is Clay Little. I'm the Associate Director for Indigenous Education and Community Engagement. I'll take this opportunity for a land acknowledgement. Vancouver Community College is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples who have been stewards of this land from time immemorial. Taking a look at our official land acknowledgement, I would ask you to just take a quick look at the term unceded. And maybe for those that do not know the term unceded, that means lands that were never freely given up to non-Indigenous peoples. I am of Mohawk ancestry and Scottish ancestry. I am also a visitor to these territories. My ancestry is Mohawk, and I'm from Six Nations. I was born and raised in Brantford, Ontario. Part of my reconciliation includes battling myth. I think that this country has an over 500-year-old narrative And there's a lot of myth busting that needs to happen for Indigenous peoples. And that's what I do, try to bust those myths. Also, part of my reconciliation is really bringing non-Indigenous peoples together and Indigenous peoples together to speak to truth and reconciliation and decolonization and working together. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just a little bit about our department, Indigenous Education and Community Engagement, otherwise known as ICE. Our vision is to provide culturally relevant programs, services that support the increased enrollment, retention, and successful graduation rates of Indigenous higher learners in the Greater Vancouver Regional District. This is done by working collaboratively with VCC and externally with our VCC partners through the Aboriginal Service Plan, or ASP, and other agencies to develop and deliver culturally relevant programs and learner support services. Next slide, please. So ways to explore indigenization and decolonization initiatives at VCC and beyond. So thinking about, and thinking about the land acknowledgement. So I know that we're doing this on Zoom, so I think the land acknowledgement can be applied anywhere that we live, especially in North America, or is what we like to call Turtle Island. I don't know if you guys have heard the term Turtle Island, but if you were to look at a map of North America, it would look like the back of a turtle, right up down to the tail at the bottom. And that has been a term that's been used by Indigenous peoples of this country for some time. How they knew the continent looked like a turtle is still a mystery to me, but that term has been used for quite some time. So thinking about your own organization, thinking about the community, there's lots of ways that all peoples can get involved in indigenization and decolonization initiatives. So again, thinking about incorporating a land acknowledgement in what you do. And you can apply, again, this method across Turtle Island. In fact, you can actually apply this method globally, as I would say quite a bit of this country has been colonized. So thinking about the Indigenous peoples and the land that we firmly plant our feet on. Things that, events that you can get involved in. There's National Indigenous Day. That is a national event with lots of events that happen in the community. I know that our department puts on a lot of events for that day. So when you see events, I would definitely encourage you to reach out and maybe do some research, maybe thinking about all of these, but all of these activities are ways that you guys can get involved. There's also the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Our department puts on various cultural workshops. We've done cedar weaving, we've done drum making, rattle making. So we do primarily provide services for our Indigenous students here at VCC, but we also offer this to the rest of the campus as well. Indigenous education and community engagement. Also, we have through the ASP, our in-resident elders program. We have an elder available at the downtown campus as well as the Broadway campus. And we can organize connection to our elders. They are also wonderful knowledge keepers, and elders are open to connect campus-wide as well. But they are scheduled in our gathering spaces. We have Elder D. George, who's from Tsleil-Waututh. She is at Broadway on Tuesdays from 10 till 2, and we have Elder John Sam Wednesdays at Broadway from 10 till 2. And downtown Tuesdays, we have Elder Jean Wasijic scheduled from 10 to 2. And so just kind of thinking that if that's another connection that someone in the community would like to make, we can do that as well, either through a Zoom connection or in person. Speaking to Vancouver Community College, we have various Indigenous art pieces and installations at VCC campuses. The artists are from a variety of different backgrounds. When I do the land acknowledgement, I do specifically speak to the host nations that are represented in where VCC is. So thinking about the 3 host nations, but we provide services to the urban Indigenous youth as well. Vancouver is home to one of the largest urban Indigenous populations in Canada. And what that means is that there's various Indigenous peoples from all over Canada that live here off reserve. So thinking about that as well, thinking about, like in British Columbia alone, we have over 200 different bands, all very unique, all with their own origin stories, their own spirituality, art. So thinking about the diversity of Indigenous peoples, but also thinking about the homelands that we stand on in the present time. So maybe getting you guys to think about that as well. We have VCC's Strategic Innovation Plan. That's a good, I think, document to take a look at. That is a document that really shows how we are indigenizing through every fabric, through Vancouver Community College. Individuals can feel free to participate in Indigenous education's Indigenous social justice initiatives. Oftentimes you will see exhibits such as the Red Dress or Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. We might do something with the Moose Hide campaign, which brings awareness against violence against men and women. Indigenous Day. So when you're thinking about social justice initiatives, Indigenous, they don't always have to come from this department. We're always happy to help consult, but I would challenge you to sort of think about some of these social justice initiatives and thinking about what you can do to spread awareness and get involved. We have a social media page on Facebook. You can follow us. We're always putting up community events there on campus and off campus. And these are events that anybody can participate in. So there's lots of different opportunity either on campus or off campus for individuals to participate and get involved. And just thinking about those community events, thinking about those bigger like Indigenous Day, or there's the National Day for Truth and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and close to that is Orange Shirt Day. I'm not sure if we've done an Orange Shirt Day initiative here at VCC where we've raised an orange flag. We show solidarity by wearing orange shirts and really just spreading that message. It's the orange shirt story connects by an individual by the name of Phyllis Webstad. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about that, but there's so many different events, and I would encourage you to participate in any of them. Next slide, please. Decolonization and indigenization resources. And I am speaking to Vancouver Community College, but I know that there's a lot of community resources on here as well. Everything that we do here at VCC is anchored in the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP. You can find that online, and there's lots of free hard copies out there. I would also like to bring attention to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. Another wonderful piece of work that has helped moving this nation forward in terms of truth and reconciliation. Oftentimes our students are in the healthcare field. The In Plain Sight report addressing Indigenous specific racism and discrimination in BC healthcare is also a wonderful report to take a look at. I know that there's so many resources online and hard copies at our VCC library. So there's many wonderful resources there, and even thinking about public libraries. So really kind of going out and learning on your own or seeing, and even kind of thinking about the land that you're on. I think it's a great start. So maybe thinking about the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples, but even taking a look at broaderly at British Columbia and Canada. Native-land.ca is a fantastic website. If you're doing land acknowledgements, it gives you a lot of maps to take a look at, some traditional areas. It also helps with land acknowledgements. So if you're thinking about bringing in a land acknowledgement to what you do, and I would recommend that as a first step. I think that by doing the land acknowledgement, it just raises awareness from the subconscious to the conscious about the lands that we're on. And I think that it really starts a formal process with us just in terms of knowing who is here, knowing who we are as well, and just paying a little bit of attention to the communities, Indigenous communities that we reside on. Indigenous Education and Community Engagement Department, please think of us as well. We have an advisor, we have a dean. Feel free to reach out to myself as well if you have any questions, or maybe you want to get connect with an elder, or maybe you want to decolonize or indigenize your classroom or the process, and you may want a little bit of direction around that. Our department is more than willing to help you navigate and perhaps connect you to either some internal resources or external resources. And finally, thinking about decolonization and indigenization, what I've been really anchored in myself, just in terms of helping this institution move forward, is the 4 R's of Indigenous education, Kirkness and Barnhart. This is 91. But looking at respect, relevance, reciprocity, and responsibility. All 4 of those quadrants, I think, are critical when we are either connecting, working with, or thinking about reaching out to the Indigenous community. Next slide, please. Here, this is all wrapped up in a holistic framework, an ecological model. We see the individual centered here, but we see the 4 R's surrounding the individual. And Indigenous peoples primarily are a collective societies. So not just thinking about the individual, but thinking about the society that they're connected with, their community, their nation, and how the 4 R's can complement that, and how that can impact their overall well-being, thinking about the physical, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional. Applying the 4 R's of Indigenous education, here are just a few ways that individuals can foster understanding and knowledge. So when we're thinking about respecting Indigenous cultural integrity, things that you guys can do or think about is read up on key concepts like colonialism, indigenization, cultural appropriation, etc. Recognize the emotions that arise when discussing specific topics related to decolonization and indigenization. As I mentioned before, you can read books and articles by Indigenous authors and view art by Indigenous artists. Take ownership of your own learning. And then find others interested in decolonization, share your experiences, and work together. When we're thinking about relevance, relevance is really about being able to see ourselves in the work that we are undertaking, or in the learning that we are doing, or the institutions that we're visiting. So being able to, for Indigenous individuals to see themselves, so making space for Indigenous perspectives and experiences. We need to see ourselves. We need to think about Indigenous protocol, ceremony, or traditions that may not be included or acknowledged. Here are a few examples that individuals can do to foster Indigenous perspectives and experiences. Take time to learn the region's Indigenous history and share your learnings with others. And that would be the native -land web page that I gave you, an excellent resource. Learning about the traditional places and landmarks nearby. Use Indigenous place names rather than the colonial names. A good example of that is the Lions, the mountains, the Lions. They're commonly known as the Lions, but before colonization, the Indigenous communities referred to them as the Sisters. So thinking about what has been colonized, even thinking about Stanley Park, and thinking about not using the colonial names that are associated, but doing your research and finding out what the true names of these landmarks are. And an easy one would be to look at the Lions Mountains and thinking about changing the name to the Sisters. Invite Indigenous individuals from the community into the classroom to share teaching and stories. Reciprocity, so important. Developing reciprocal relationships. It's about, for me, It's about if we're making lasagna together, this is a good metaphor that I've used, is rather than serving the finished lasagna, you're going to invite the individual in to say, hey, these are the dinner plans I'm kind of thinking about, and maybe even going beyond that and making just a connection, but really bringing in individuals and front loading rather than bringing them in either in the middle or not at the start. So thinking about how to build reciprocal relationships, even just reaching out sometimes and having a coffee and exchanging stories and putting a name to a face, I think is a great start. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Let's find out together. And respect, relevance. And responsibility. We have all a responsibility to put in the effort and make sure that we are all on, that we're doing our due diligence and learning how to, thinking about the proper names and the places and the pronunciation and really starting off in a good spot. Next slide, please. Ways to incorporate Indigenous cultural learnings. I think begin each class with a personalized land acknowledgement and share the opportunity with others. Let others take that responsibility. If we're not thinking about a class, we can put land acknowledgements. I've in front loading any kind of meetings, department meetings, an event like this. I think we had a land acknowledgement yesterday by Elder Jean, which was lovely. It's starting things off in a good way, and it's bringing about attention to the lands that we're starting off and really starting to bring things from the subconscious to the conscious. VCC has a land acknowledgement that we use. For myself, I do a little bit of a deeper land acknowledgement. I've done a lot of workshops on campus. I'd be happy to work with any of you if you're thinking about doing a land acknowledgement or would like to run yours off me. But if you want to do it a little bit, if you want to make a land acknowledgement meaningful, I say always introduce yourself like I did and where we are from. And I like to take it a little step further and bring in where I am with my own personal journey for reconciliation. Raise awareness and take part in campus and community Indigenous events and initiatives. Share what you learn with your classmates, colleagues, and add that to the discussion. Collaborate with Indigenous knowledge keepers. I think that our department is a wonderful resource if you're looking at outreaching and maybe augmenting your class with maybe an Indigenous knowledge keeper or expert. I think that all curriculum, all things can be indigenized. We have elders that are available, and we are also very familiar with so many community resources as well. Truth and Reconciliation's calls to action, thinking about how this document can be used as a roadmap to help incorporate Indigenous learnings or systemic change. If you haven't had a chance to read the Truth and Reconciliation, 94 calls to action, I would strongly recommend you do so. It's been out for some time, as well as the UNDRIP document. Decolonize teaching practices. This is another thing that our department can be consulted on, but even thinking about how we present ourselves, it doesn't have to be a classroom. We could thinking about a format like this, rather than pontificating up front in front of rows, maybe hosting the talk in a circle. Another Coast Salish protocol is going counterclockwise rather than going clockwise. So there's also like little things you can do. It could be done in a talking circle format, and there's some protocol around how a talking circle works as well. And that's something that I'm seeing a lot more on campus. So maybe even thinking about, getting out of the indoors and hosting on the land as well. So thinking about different ways, or maybe having your elder start the day in a good way and provide a blessing. And just kind of going back to the land acknowledgement. So thinking about how our elders open up, there are two different ways. So there is a welcoming, and there's also a blessing. So if you're going to have an official welcoming to the territory, you would need someone from the host territory to do that. We have a couple elders that are from the traditional territory, but they are able to open up with a blessing and a land acknowledgement and start things off in a good way. So it's kind of thinking about host nations, a welcoming from an elder, and it's almost kind of like someone welcoming you into your own house. You want to have someone from that community do that. Connect with IS, seek an on-campus elder, utilize the library's Indigenous First Nation study books and online resources for researching Indigenous topics. There's so much support information out there. Next slide, please. Oh, wow, it's the end. Thank you so much. Here is my email address. Please feel free to write and reach out to me if you have any questions. Or if there's something that I can elaborate on or help make a connection. And just would like to thank everybody for their time here today.
Thank you, Clay, for that presentation. We already have one question in the chat for you. We have right now more than 130 representatives from higher education institutions here. And there's a question that is for like the representatives of post-secondary institutions here that have programs that are mainly online or that are hybrid. What advice do you have on how they can support Indigenous students spiritually and physically?
Online. That's a good question. We have online support. Everything that we provide, we can also make available online. So I put out a welcome letter to students, basically saying that they can connect with an elder if need be. We also have advisors, Indigenous advisors, support personnel that can connect online with students. Thinking about their community as well. If we're working with Indigenous students that may be taking a class in a community that may be quite far from where you're teaching, there are lots of Indigenous supports in local regional communities as well. Thinking about friendship centers. So my thought would be to have those conversations. So if it's support that they're looking for, what kind of online support can we provide them with? What kind of community support that we can connect them with? And part of what we do here at the department is connecting with those students and try to break down those barriers so the students are successful.
Thank you so much for answering that question. Thank you once again for providing some food for thought as well for all of us on how we can incorporate Indigenous cultural learnings in the work we do and also in the work we do with international students. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Available if anyone wants to reach out, very happy to do this. Very good to see everybody today.
Perfect, thank you. Then I'm now going to introduce Daryl Smith, the Director of International at the University of Fraser Valley. As Swinder has mentioned this morning, Archway works together with UFV, and Daryl will give a bit more info on how his institution is working together with community partners. Daryl, over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk today. I've learned a lot already from Swinder, Ryan, and Clay, and looking forward to sharing a bit about what's happening at UFV. So I'm going to start the presentation. So I'm going to be talking about how UFV International is working with community support to support students. I took international off there just because I think a lot of things we're doing are looking at a wider scope here. And I'm looking at community here as in the different communities within the institution. I've used the word silos in the past. I'm trying to get away from that to give us a more of a positive spin on this, but how the community of the UFV International is working with other communities within the institution and also outside of the institution. First of all, I'm very grateful to be presenting to different people. I'm on Musqueam territory right now, but just acknowledge that UFV is on Stalo territory. The Stalo people, specifically the Sumatha and the Matsqui people, they're Stalo are people of the river. Put a picture of the river down there. It's an amazing place to live and work, and we're very grateful to be able to do that. If you ever get a chance to go on a place name tour, this is run out of Bad Rock Tours with Sonny McCalsey. He shows that the doctor Sonny McCalsey shows that relationship to the land and the strong connection to the Stalo culture and the Stalo people. So once again, very grateful. We do have Stalo is definitely a community that we work with. We have some initiatives that are looking at the international Indigenous communities and connections to the Stalo community. I'm not going to talk about those today. I'll wait for another time when I have my Indigenous colleagues with us. But one of the areas we're looking at, look for that in an upcoming conference, BCCIE or CBIE. A little bit about UFV, University of Fraser Valley. We have a regional mandate to serve the Fraser Valley. Specifically school districts. It comes down to school districts in Hope, Mission, Abbotsford, and Chilliwack. We became a university in 2008. This is our 50th year anniversary. So Drew, Ryan, we're both celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we're looking forward to those celebrations. I'm not going to go too much into our integrated strategic plan, but I just wanted to highlight the word community in here. So if we look at our vision, what we're doing as learners and leaders is leading to community reconciliation, prosperity locally and beyond. Looking at our values, we're looking at community, again, excellence, inclusivity, and integrity. And looking at our mission, so engaging learners, transforming lives, and building community. So there's lots of strategic imperatives under that building community, and one of them is to create opportunities for the world to positively interact with the Fraser Valley, and for the Fraser Valley to positively interact with the world. And I think that's what we're trying to do here in some of these initiatives we're going to be talking about today. So that's the strategy part, but we all know that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and so it's nice to have those things in the documents such as strategic plans. But what are we actually doing? So I'm going to look at 4 here. I think I've got about 10 or 15 minutes, so I think I'll be able to get through this. All of these are collaborations with other groups, so it's not just international working on them, and the collaborations are necessary. I think they fall in line with a lot of things that are being called on us from IRCC and the BC, the province, as far as the EQA, and a lot of them I think build on some of the things we talked about this morning already during the presentations. So the first one is the International Student Success India. This is starting with India. We're hoping to do this in other areas and in regions, but India's where we've begun this. So this is a post-LOA, so that's a letter of acceptance. So the student has paid their fees and we've given them a letter of acceptance. Pre-departure engagement with students from India. Non-FVI, I'll explain what that means in a second, to enhance transition and settlement. So Fraser Valley, India, FVI is a campus in Chandigarh. These students usually come to us in 3rd year. They use the UFV curriculum. They use our learning management system through the registrar's office. Their transition is fairly smooth. We're still working on that and supporting it, but what we're talking about today is all the other students who are not coming through FVI, so typically through an agent. And this program is meeting students in their community. No marketing or recruitment is happening in these meetings. This is all students who are coming, they're on their way. Sahib Paul, so you can see Sahib Paul Singh in that picture. You can see in the picture there, he's standing right next to me. He conducts these meetings in community. So there's small group meetings, 6 to 8 students in Chandigarh, Ludhiana, Amritsar, Delhi, different cities where he goes to the cities and invites the students in. So small groups, 6 to 8. Last semester with the incoming students, he met with about 240 students. So there's a lot of small group meetings going on. I think parents are invited to these. one of the aspects of this, as opposed to other programs I've seen where there's maybe 150 students or 100 students in the room, is this allows for dialogue. So when it's a small group and it's somebody very familiar with the culture, so Paul is great in these meetings. Initially, that dialogue doesn't happen, but by the end of the 45 minutes or so, there's dialogue started out. There's questions, so we're able to ask those, answer those questions and engage in that dialogue. It's more advice and encouragement. So sometimes we see the agent selling a dream, and the student has this dream, but what are some of the realities before they leave home? So what's the cost of living? What does it mean to live in Surrey and take an hour and a half commute to Abbotsford on a daily basis? How do we secure housing? Where do these things start? What is it to get a job? What do I need to think about? So it's that advice around settlement transition pre-departure. It's been very successful in directing students to those resources. That's what we're hoping to do. Our line here is, we're really glad you're coming, but you're about to engage in something very difficult. This is going to be hard. However, it's not just hard for you, it's hard for everyone. There's a lot of students, domestic and international students, who have, you're doing difficult things, but don't worry, we have a lot of resources for you. And we have those resources available at UFB and in the community. And how do we connect you to those resources? We found it's improving communication. Sometimes we find that the communication goes to an email address that the student doesn't necessarily have access to. And so that's often held by an agent in some cases. And so we're finding that we send out that information. We send it to your UFB address, but students haven't connected with that email address yet. We're trying this new technology called a letter, like a paper letter that we send to the students to their address, that showing the outline of what to expect. That's followed up by a phone call from to the students, and then engaging with the meeting in the different locations throughout the in this case mostly throughout the Punjab region. This is good in some ways. We find out students that have the information already and know what to expect, and we find out students that don't. And we can kind of relate that back to the agent or who is giving the information, and then we can follow up with that agent as to why this may not be happening. And so there's a little bit of accountability and checking up on some of the things that are going on. So that's our first initiative. The second one is called ISIP, so International Integration Program. The purpose is to provide a program to ensure integration of international students within 1 to 2 semesters to increase engagement with all the services available within the institution beyond their first year. So what we find is that we do a great job, UFB International, I'm sure the post-secondary institutions here do a great job on orientation, bringing them in, and we know how crucial that first 6 weeks is. And we also have our student services that provide counseling, that provide career advice, they provide academic supports, they provide many supports. And the assumption is that the student in the beginning will, after orientation, will find their way into these services. And I'm not sure if that's 100% true. I know that we give the information at the during orientation, and apologies, here's my bad dad joke of the day. So we're talking about I sip the information as it's needed in a timely fashion, as opposed to I drink from the fire hose information delivery, which we sometimes see in these situations. So when do we give that information, and when is it timely and appropriate for the students to get it? I'm working with Todd Odgers. A lot of you will know Todd. We're doing this clarificative evaluation leading to an international student journey map. This is simply sitting down with all the groups that interact with the international students and saying, what do you do? What are your goals? What's your purpose? And what are your goals in this situation? And then creating a journey map. So, and identifying where the gaps are and where the holes are. It's been enlightening. This is underway. We're doing it right now. And we're finding out assumptions about what the different groups are doing, because we think, oh, I think they're doing that, and we talk to the group and no, they're not doing that. Well, where is this happening? It's not happening anywhere, and so we need to fill in those gaps and figure this out. We're looking at a systems approach here where each individual unit could be doing things perfectly, but if we're not connected to each other and we know what the goal is, the ultimate goal, and the handoff is at different situations, it's not going to work. So we want to integrate this into the system. This is supported by our Vice President of Students, Elisa Webb, in what she's initiative she's leading called the Student Ready Campus. So it's been very informative, and I can't stress how much figuring out what we think is happening and as opposed to what the reality of what's happening. So look for some results that come out of that, hopefully in the next 6 months or so. Next one is called building communities across culture. So we want to better serve faculty, staff, and students with the intentional development of intercultural competency and professional development, including experiential learning. Intentional here is the key. Intercultural competency does not come with contact, it comes with skill development. And so how can we intentionally build this skill development? This is an initiative which, an idea that came out of faculty and staff. It's supported by international as well as other groups at the institution, but it's not directed at students. It's directed at the faculty and staff. As a former faculty member, I would spend, with classes and labs over a semester, well over 60, 70 hours in contact with students. How am I adapting and adjusting and understanding the intercultural competency and needs of the students in my classroom? So we've had 20 faculty and staff participate in this. It's an 8-month professional development program with scaffolded curriculum. So workshops are great, and you have one-off workshops and you get a lot of information, but getting deeper and going deeper in this conversation, looking at my power, looking at privilege, looking at those conversations which are hard to have in an initial conversation, but we want to go deeper with this group. The experiential learning part, we've at Cedar Park, Swinder will know about Cedar Park. We've done our excursions within the community. The other thing we'll be doing is on February 10th, we'll be taking 16 faculty and staff to India for 2 weeks to get a better understanding of where our students are coming from and how we can better support them. The goal here is to change practice. So how are we going to change what we're doing and what we've done in the last while in order to further these things, allow these things to go further as far as our support for students. Last one I'm going to talk about is the Fraser Valley Community Charter. So this community, we've talked about it. We've had Swinder and Ryan talk about some of the connections to community. We definitely have, I think, as a post-secondary institutions, focus on the system, the academic system, where the student is coming into the academic sphere, and we're guiding supports there. But I think we need to look at them in a more holistic way, and I think that was brought up a couple of times already, where the student is coming into a community. The student is coming into a medical system, a policing system, a food system, employment, housing, all of the different systems that are there. We need to look at that. Archway, I put that first. Obviously, it's the support that they provide is incredibly valuable, and that connection with them is necessary. However, what's the responsibility here with the institution? Do we overburden our settlement service workers, or how do we integrate those students so that the services that we provide in the institution are there as well? Where do we support? Where do we back off? Where do we engage and help? So that's the conversations we'll be having. This work is being conducted by Community Health and Social Innovation Hub. It's a research hub at UFV called Chassis, led by Dr. Martha Dow. I think there might be a few Chassis student researchers in the audience today. They do fabulous work. So they have connections with community already. They're doing this research. And so how do we develop, again, an intentional program in order to move this work forward? That's all I have. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to talk about these things. Hopefully, we'll be presenting on these individual initiatives in the next conferences that are coming up. So, but if anybody wants to talk about them, happy to engage. Daryl.smith@ufE.ca would be my contact information. I'm sure you can get that from the group here. So thank you.